So my name is Lucy Foster and I am the gallery manager at Deland Contemporary. Today we have Daniel Walbidi here with us and Emily Rohr from Short Street Gallery. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
You've both travelled across the world to be here with us for this opening, which was a huge success. This is 25 East 73rd Street. And Daniel, we have the absolute pleasure of having your works as our very first exhibition in this space. How does it feel to be here amongst your works in a different city?
Yeah, I'm very grateful and honored. And just wanted to thank both you and Deland for making it possible, and also Emily for working in cooperation.
I thought I'd start, we'd go back a little bit in time and talk to you about how you started your practice, how you started out, discovering that you were going to get into painting. Where did that all begin? Can you tell us a bit about that?
It started at school, at the school that I attended, which was located in the community that I come from, small community of Bijadanga, south of Broome in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. And I think it was during the last few years of schooling, and we had a teacher who was actually teaching us art that was basically part of the curriculum. We were basically doing what we call, what you'd refer to as still art.
So like still lifes, like the westernized sort of version of
Bowls
painting.
of fruit.
Bowls of fruit, yes.
Flowers.
Yes, I see.
Concentrating on the light and shadow and
A very Western tradition of painting.
Of course, yeah.
And we sort of painted in that style for a while, and then I started reading books. I think one of the teachers brought books, and it was based around a lot of the movement in Central Australia, like the Pupanya, Chula movement, and also read books about some of the artists from up the Kimberley region,
Of course.
up north, Woman and the artists from Fitzroy, the Mankaja,
Yeah, of course.
and many of the art-producing art centers in the Kimberley region. And I was very fascinated and became very interested. But then I read books about the late Emily Nungware from Utopia. And I was blown away by her art, and it was quite different from the traditional style, like the desert iconographic style.
And would you say that Emily's work and the Papunya Tula movement is what inspired you to make your practice?
Yes. We were encouraged by our teacher. We didn't actually have much materials. We didn't have much in the way of materials, so we recycled or made our own kind of boards. We recycled collected boards and cut them into certain sizes, and then we used to glue to prime them, and then we'd proceed by painting on top of them.
Yeah.
And it grew from there. And during that time we got acquainted and we met Emily. We walked into the gallery and presented her with these wooden boards.
And how old was Daniel when he walked into Short Street?
Right? So
yes,
he was very young, and we'd seen his work in some of the. We did once a year a student exhibition for young people in the community to nurture up and coming talent, and we'd seen some of Daniel's work, and were aware that he had an incredible line. I love. I mean, look, I look at colour line form even with traditional Aboriginal art, and Daniel had something at 14, So you had some gift, I think. I'd say. And you were very headstrong about. I discouraged him. I told him to be an artist was a terrible call, and he should be a doctor or a lawyer, a good middle class upbringing. But of course, when you are a natural born artist or you have that in you, I think you have to paint, and you were never going to stop Daniel from exploring art or becoming an artist. I think it's some people just are born to this. It's not even something you have any choice over. Would you say you had any choice over becoming an artist?
Well, I wanted to become a teacher, but then I guess the art or the painting sort of was the stronger
You had the pull.
side. Yeah.
It was pulling you.
Yeah, stronger side. So I pursued that.
And how do you balance your artistry with your family obligations and family life and everything else?
It's quite tricky, but sort of tend to manage most things. One day I'm a father, husband. Next day I can be participating in cultural, be a part of ceremonies and all those things. And then I'm an artist, so I try and balance
many
it all.
hats. You're wearing many hats at the moment. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of these, all of these paintings, not only are they absolutely stunning aesthetically, but they're landscapes, but they also hold a lot of meaning, and there's stories behind each work. Can you tell us maybe a bit about one or two of the works where, one of the stories that means the most to you in your country?
Well, most of these paintings have great significance to me because they are centered around land and family connection. And prior to migrating to the coast, this was where my father's family would have lived and sort of congregated around and socialized around with other family groups or with the immediate family. But they hold great stories and significance, and I think painting them is one way of maintaining them.
Of conveying the stories.
Yes, conveying. And
absolutely. Preserving them.
And that's the name of the show. I love the name of the show, because this idea of eternity forever and eternal place, and I'm always fascinated by these stories transcending time, culture.
Absolutely.
And having such significance, and you being such an important continuum in that cultural tradition.
But they are very old stories that are connected to these places. And
before the land was even formed.
Yeah, exactly.
It goes back to the formation of the land, before even people, it's like mythological, but it's deeper than that because it continues to exist.
Yes. Most
it's very difficult to say.
Difficult to explain, and it's complicated. Certain things you can't talk about or explain, and there are things that you are able to talk about and explain.
I guess that's part of your artistic expression as well, is through paintings. This is your way of passing down those stories to the next generation. You're almost preserving them in a way in the form of a painting. You're using your medium as a tool of communication.
Yeah.
And not change. Stories change over time. Stories change with generations. They get passed down. Things, things evolve. The message could get lost in many ways. with different generations. What you're doing is you're putting them into almost like a history tablet in many ways. You're preserving them in paintings.
Yeah.
But also too, I think because you have a consistency of subject matter and it's such a deeply intimate subject matter, and it exists not just in painting but in song, dance.
Most of the songs, the knowledge actually conveyed through songs.
Yes.
It's not actually written.
So it's not written, so it's verbal.
It's conveyed from mouth to ear. Like we just mentioned, you undergo rites of passages. And I mean, at the beginning, I was quite restricted because I was very young. So I just painted in a certain way, but as I progressed, so did my paintings and made transitions all along the way.
Of course.
And to what has become, as you can see in the exhibition.
Absolutely. So the more that you've developed and established yourself within your family and in your country, the more you think that your paintings have grown as well and developed over time.
Yes.
So Daniel, your works obviously combined have lots of cultural meanings, and they're incredibly contemporary at the same time. How do you fuse the two together?
I guess being a younger person and having traveled, I think, to most places, like each time we travel, I'd probably take a time to go out and see or visit the museums or art museums. And that sort of
It influences you to
influences me.
Yeah.
It sort of sees the diversity.
Of course. And do you think visiting galleries and museums in New York will have an effect on your work?
Yes.
Maybe in the next year or two?
Probably not straight away, but it will probably have some kind of influence and affect my art in probably a good way.
Yeah.
Because it takes a long time to come into fruition. I'd probably see something and it won't happen straight away, but it does happen.
Yes, you need time to consider what it is that you're
and plus it's like it comes through like absorbing these things.
Absolutely.
I've worked with quite a number of different artists over the years, and Daniel's probably the most considered and contemplative, and we never see paintings that aren't incredible, because he really doesn't produce a lot of work, but what he produces is always so full of substance and depth.
So you're a perfectionist, Daniel.
I'm trying to be.
Yeah. And so out of the 10 works in this exhibition, I guess it's fair to say it's taken you a whole year to produce the 10 pieces.
Longer.
Or longer. Yes. You're working
like how
on it.
just juggling things, with the different hats that I...
Absolutely, of course. Good things take time. But it's you can see clearly on the canvas that these works, they take time. There's intricate layers. There is so much meticulous dotting, the use of colour, the layering as well. Like, you can see that these paintings have not been done overnight. And I think that's what makes your works so truly special. And when you look at them, you almost need to sit down and stare at them for an hour. Like, you need to take them in. You need the space to actually absorb what you're seeing on the canvas and understand the works and let them speak to you, because they're so incredibly complex. And I think that's what everyone here in New York is just so curious about. They're so fascinated, is that how can a work hold so much meaning and be so beautiful at the same time? And we just say to people, well, that's Daniel. That's this beautiful art form that we have here at Deland Contemporary. So it's incredibly exciting to show people that to new viewers as well.
Well, and I also think it's such an interesting perspective on landscape painting, just within the tradition of landscape painting. I mean, we've broken down elements. We've gone through kind of modernism and postmodernism and all kinds of movements where we've broken elements down. And I always say, it's almost like Superman flying over the earth with X-ray vision perspective that no one thought to paint landscape paintings. So just as landscape work, it has so many layers and depth.
Absolutely.
And from a contemporary art point of view, it's quite a radical departure from the Western tradition of painting. And I think
Definitely.
that it has such a massive place in the global art movement, and I think it's taking an ancient culture to teach us the truth of what things are. We're not just surface.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of layers to everything, and I think that in itself certainly fascinates me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think ultimately will hold its place in the history of art.
Absolutely. Oh, it's certainly fascinating. People of New York at the moment, you're receiving all of this acclaim and attention. What's next on the agenda for you, Daniel?
Just keep painting, really.
Just keep going, keep
Pursuing,
producing, keep developing your practice as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, exploring new palettes.
Challenge myself and find ways.
Find ways, new inspirations,
New
perhaps.
inspiration.
Yes, yeah. And when you're looking for new inspiration, new things to paint, are you just looking at the aesthetics and colour palette and technique, or are you looking at different stories to convey?
I think it's all a combination, really. Because we live out in the middle of remote community. The land was also the biggest influence. The colors. As you can see, there's a mixture of reds and yellows and blues. I guess it's the land that sort of influences me, because like I explained earlier, my father's family and my mother's family are actually desert-orientated people. They migrated to many of the stations and ended up eventually on the mission. Back then it was the Lagrange mission. Once the people got administration of the community, they call it Pijidanga community. And it's on the coast on Garajari country. So the land and the sea has also been an influence to me. The colors. So even when I'm flying on the plane, I always ask if I could be seated in the windows, so I could be able to look down on the land, because that's how most of indigenous.
So you get a bird's eye view.
Because most of the artists that you come across in Australia, especially indigenous artists, would look down on the canvases and sit on the ground and paint. That's how they view the world. That's how the land is mapped out.
Yes. Yeah. And would any of your future practices include any other kind of medium? I know that you've done some installation work previously with the gallery. Is that something that could be on the cards?
Probably down the track.
Perhaps.
Perhaps probably down the track. Probably. Usually we don't. I'd probably prefer not to go back on. I mean,
return to.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably look back at old paintings, but I wouldn't, paint in that style anymore. It's always
necessarily repeat something. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you were talking about the other night, Emily, is when people say, they come to you and they're like, I want a Daniel Walbidi painting, but I want one that looked like this picture or this series or with these colours. And that's the problem, is that you can't go to Daniel and say, we want this exact painting. It's what comes from the heart. It's progress. So, he's not going to go back and repeat the same painting again. It's always looking forward. It's always progressing.
Well, every moment's different. isn't it? And I think the country's constantly changing. All of us are constantly changing, and I think that's something I've learnt very much from spending quite a bit of time with Daniel and the old people, is that each moment exists unto itself, and that's why it's so precious, if you like, because just us being here together is such a precious moment, because we're getting to share something or whatever, but we can never repeat this moment, right? And I think that's very much part of Daniel's practice. He's evolving, he's constantly changing. The land he's painting shifts every day as well, and in the time frame of the day, and but that's also why the songs and the cultural history, which has been the one continuum through it, are so interesting too, because they're like the truthful element that goes through everything.
Of course.
But I think that's the core of Daniel's work in a way, but yeah, definitely we can't do commissions because they never work out how people want them to. So, it has to be where Daniel's at.
It's intuitive. Your work is so intuitive. So going back and doing something again, repeating it, I guess, is like staging an artwork. And that's not what you're...
No. It's very hard for me to repeat something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think we should go back to maybe talking about some of the artworks, like you said, that they're maps, they're visual maps of the country. So like a lot of these works are so heavily embedded with your country, nature, the terrain, cultural insights as well. Can you sort of talk a bit more about perhaps one or two, maybe even this painting here?
Yeah.
The story behind the work, because that's one of the biggest questions we get is people want to understand what exactly is happening in these paintings, and it'd be great to hear it firsthand from you.
This piece is called Yurlupirti, and Yurlupirti is my father's family. It's like that's like the family's home. That's where I think the family, they have the strong affiliation and connection with this place. And it's a very important place because it's part of the song cycle. When people talk about home, I guess, if I can say that in the Korea way or the Western way of seeing things, you have deeds to your home, and you have that entitlement or a piece of paper, saying this is my home, my family's home, so on. But because we come from a very old existence, very old culture, stories connect us to these places. And families were actually born there and camped in these places and socialized and conducted ceremonies in these places. So it's of great importance to us.
Well, and this is also maybe talk about the fact that it's in the wet season.
Yeah, but it's like a landscape. You probably can see the lines, the old sand dunes that surround this particular place.
Is this around these?
Yes, sand dunes.
Yeah, and up the top there.
And the blue, it's like during after the rain, one big rain, and
so the land's filled up with
water. Yeah, and then it's
there's not a lot.
Yeah.
There's very minimal blue throughout your works in this series. Is that because it's dry? It's dry?
It's probably a certain time. Sometimes when it's during the big rain, I probably get influenced by the country after the rain. greens and blues and all those kind of things, all those colors.
So your works and your palette are quite
sometimes
heavily
not only
by the
this,
seasons as well.
it's also influenced by season and how I'm feeling at that point in time.
And the main circles, I think, too, because it's such a important,
Waterholes.
it's the core to desert life, isn't it?
Yes, in most desert paintings, that's you probably see, circles which represents a place.
Well, the black holes in your paintings, they're just so iconic to your style. They're in every single work. So I guess you're conveying an important part of
it's
your
like,
country.
you're looking in, you're being taken into that place.
And it goes deep underground.
Yeah, it goes deep underground, and not only are we connected through.
It's the other world, isn't it? It's a window into the metaphysical realm.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
We are connected beneath. There's song cycles that do penetrate deep into the earth, and there's a starting point, and then that would be an exit point or entry point. And it's a different part of Australia because Australia is a big continent.
So they're like portals.
Yeah,
transport, like you see in space films.
Yeah.
Through a
So
wormhole.
access to this other layer of being.
Yeah, and like you mentioned during the opening, that it's also like, the constellations reflects the land, and the land reflects the constellations.
Yeah,
The skies. We've got stories that are connected to the skies as well.
So a lot of the stories have the Seven Sisters, the Wadikajura. I mean, these are very famous stories about the making of the Australian landscape, and almost every, I mean, not just Yurlupirti or Mangala or every tribe in Australia, whether they're, in Broome or Sydney, have stories about the Seven Sisters or the Wadikajura, which are the two men travelling. And then there's lots of other levels of stories too. Yeah. And they travelled and made the country and a lot of the waterholes.
They met up with different ancestral beings and instigated ceremonies and established law and laid law down as a foundation.
And a lot of the laws are code of how to live too. It's like a religion as well. So it has a lot of moral tales to it. So you might have someone stealing someone's wife or not sharing food, or, they're often embedded in stories of morality.
So it's like a code.
Yeah,
it's like a code of conduct.
If I can say, like how God gave the Israelites the tablets of law, and
like the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, commanded the Israelites on how to live and worship God, and have that kind of connection. And
it's not just about doing the right thing to each other; it's also about doing the right thing by the land as well. So this is it always has to be respected and treated.
Yes.
As a living entity almost.
Land speaks for itself,
It seems like you hold a lot of responsibility as well. So if you're like in your community, to uphold these sort of morals and values and ways of being and treating other people within your community, that would take that would be a lot of work for you, wouldn't it, Daniel? Like, do you have people in your community or elders that oversee this, or is it?
Yes, the old people themselves, they governed us, because they are men and women of high degree.
Yes.
You have lawyers and doctors that are of high degree, people of high degree. But it's what makes them sort of gives them that level of authority is the connection to the law and how they know the law, but intricately, understanding. They have the deeper meaning, and they're the ones that possess the stories and songs. And in our society, you cannot conduct ceremonies or, be someone who gives orders. It's always the elders that do that. You cannot self-appoint yourself. Yeah. These days they have, nowadays they give themselves titles or self-title themselves, give themselves labels. And but when you have your elders still alive, they are the ones that that you must give reverence to. And they grew up in a different kind of understanding in a different time, whereas now some of our communities have abandoned that.
Of course, they would have a vastly different
They probably
experience.
adjusted to,
Yes.
I think, the modern way of living, working, which is okay, but always keep yourself grounded and maintained, because I think for a lot of us, especially in my community, I can say that it's our ceremonies and our law and our culture that keeps us grounded. We are always encouraged to go out and work and provide and, try and make a living for ourselves, but always come back and participate in the ceremonies. Yeah, otherwise you get frowned upon if you don't, If the elders were still around, you'd probably get told or frowned upon or...
Of course, because they think that you're just seeing their
exactly.
community. Absolutely. And given that these elders have had such a vastly different experience growing up, do you receive full support from them, given your career and the commercialization of it?
It's sad to say that they long since left us, but with the people the very few elders that we do, we always I guess most of them would be proud of me. And I know my dad, I just got a phone call from him the other day. He was very happy, he was pleased. I told him about meeting Steve Martin and all that, so he was very happy. I sent him a photo.
Oh,
that's great. That's wonderful.
He's very proud. Daniel's like the prince, really.
Yeah.
Under his father, who's
I'm sure everyone in your
senior.
community will be very proud of you.
Yeah.
They also keep, you are part of the community, so people will keep you honest, won't they?
Yes.
Keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah.
Never be too big-headed.
Yes, as soon as I go back home, I'm just a normal...
You're just Daniel.
Just Daniel or Dano.
You're just Daniel or Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have 3 daughters as well. Do any of them want to pursue an artistic career after their father?
I hope so, yeah. I mean, they tried helping me paint now and again.
They ruined a few.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. But probably if not, I hope they become,
Obviously, become
something else.
Something in their own right.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're a good dad. Those are beautiful family. So beautiful family values, and the girls are beautiful. I have to say, I commend you on your parenting. I think it always impresses me.
Well, it takes a lot to be a full-time artist and raise a family and also attend to all your other obligations. So it's wonderful. Obviously, you receive enough support from them to be able to come over here and do what you need to do as an artist.
So what do you think is the universality about your work? Because people can see stuff in it, but they're not quite sure what they're seeing. It touches people. So what do you...
Particularly if they haven't got sort of like a pre-understanding of Indigenous culture.
It's like, I guess, the First Nations of this country and how they connected to country. Yes. And now they have a long tradition. Yeah. We actually went and visited the museum, the
Native American.
Native American Museum, and I was very fascinated with what I saw, and I also had an insight of New York, how it was before the pre-settlement, before settlement, pre-settlement,
Yeah.
and it was very fascinating, and I learned a lot. So I probably would convey that kind of messages, that we are from a long culture. That's a very old culture.
But human beings are still human beings, aren't they? And I think even now, like I was thinking about, we learned there were lots of different tribes that lived in Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
Before there's still
settlement.
lots of different tribes living in Manhattan,
Yes.
you know, even though the people have come from all over the world. It's such a rich place.
So culturally rich.
Everyone, but you know, you go to all the different areas and they're all really different, right?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a modern tribalism.
Exactly. And I'm also fascinated with, visiting, most of the sites around New York.
Yeah.
And listening to they're looking at the diversity of people that make this their home and have made this their home. Yeah.
And when you visited the Museum of the Native American, their stories that they convey in their art as well, and their ancestral sort of like history. Are there parallels? Like, have you drawn parallels to their ideas as well?
Yeah, we could make out or say that there is, we sort of spoke to each other and said, oh, this is similar to...
Similarities.
We could see
different stories.
Had different stylistic variations in the same way that a lot of the traditional Aboriginal people have style.
Yes.
Like all cultures do. And I think there are universal truths.
Yeah, universal
for
and
people.
universal. There's universal, fundamental things, universal.
The nature of existence or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's just like the older the culture, the more you cut back to that universal truth of existence. And I always think great art touches on those shared, people are obsessed with diversity now and having my unique voice or whatever. Well, I never think that lends itself to great art because it's often exclusionary, whereas I think some of the greatest art comes from the commonality of human existence, and it's what we share. And I see at the moment the world's become so binary and so, your experience is so fantastically unique. But I think one of the great appeals of Daniel's work is the fact that it does touch on that universality, in a way, even though it's a very unique story or whatever. I mean, I don't know. That's just my feeling about that.
Definitely.
There's certain things that we can all see that touches us all fundamentally that are really, because we're not that different. As much as we have differences, we're still all human beings and brothers and sisters, and we're all connected by the land we walk on.
Yes, we're all God's children.
Well, that's right, if you want to take all God's children.
Yeah.
So, there's stuff that we share, and I think that stuff, because that brings us together rather than divides us, and I think that's much more important, especially in this day and age, in the age of the internet where everything's so binary and so absolute. And
do you think that is one of the core sort of like purposes of your work, is to bring people together?
Yeah.
To
make them understand, and if my art can bring people together, well, so be it. Even in the Kimberleys, it's a diverse, there's a diverse cultures within one region. You have, for example, the Badi people, which is up the peninsula. They mainly pearl shell carvers, you
Yeah,
know
they
that they
do
make the
pearl shell.
Ouija and all those things. And another example is the Woman artists. They use ochre and paint with ochres.
And very minimal,
Yeah.
different.
Very pared back, like
Yeah.
Rover Thomas,
Like Rover Thomas.
Queenie
you can
Mackenzie.
see. Yeah.
Yep. It's quite very diverse in the art practices and cultures as well, and the languages. You know, you can tell even physically where someone comes from. You know, this is someone from up north, or this is someone from the desert. So the language sort of tells us, we can pinpoint where they actually come from because of the language that they speak.
And when artists from different regions come to Short Street Gallery to see your works, what are their reactions? What are their reactions like when they experience your work for the first time?
Well, they won't look at anything else, and they all want to go on the wait list for a Daniel. I think, Daniel just has this thing. I don't know. You got some weird magic going on or something. We're putting
Well, I think your
in
works
that
are
door.
just so unique. That's
They're
probably
so
their
unique.
reaction is just wow.
And I think everyone gets so touched by Daniel's work, particularly. There's a few artists that have that gravitas. I think we see a lot of different people coming in. Some people, they're not even into art. They're just tourists coming through or whatever, and they come into the gallery and they go, what's this? But there are some artists that have such gravitas that people can't help but respond to them in a way that they're, deeply touched in some way, or something's been communicated to them that transcends language. And that's when I love it. I go, oh my God, that's what it's about. For me, that's what great art is about too, and that's what it does for me. I love being transported to thinking about things beyond
emotion
and having that emotional response to a painting.
Absolutely.
But and so you do see it, and it certainly isn't for every artist that you have. I mean, there's lots of different ways of working, but I do think, I don't know, I think with your work it does do that to people. It has that profound effect on people. I don't know why. I'm sure
I don't know why too.
You don't know why. It's so hard to pinpoint it, right? Because it's this...
They're just so incredibly
language.
consuming and beautiful, and that's just it, is you have an emotional response when you witness a Daniel Walbidi painting for the first time. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for sharing some insight on your paintings today. We really, really appreciate both of you being here with us in New York. It's so incredibly special to have you here with the artworks. Daniel, good luck with your with future practice, and I hope that we've had an influence on you coming from New York. Perhaps maybe your next series.
Probably New York painting.
A New York painting.
I want to see the New York painting. Well, the many hills of New York.
Now that I went on the ferry boat, so...
Yeah, we did the circle line. We're so loving doing all the tourist things. And they do it so well, they're so informed, aren't they? All the people talking about stuff and things. It's so good.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you've had a great time.
We've got Freeze, we've got the MoMA, we've got the Met. We haven't done all the majors yet for Daniel. So they're all things we're very excited to
great.
really see.
Enjoy.
Thank you, Lucy.